Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Uh, I forgot what my YouTube channel is called. It's Let's Chat About You Today. That's what it's called. And I'm going a little bit away from my usual conversation on this channel, which is normally when I interview indie authors or self-published authors so that they have a chance to have their voices heard. But we always talk about their stories and what it meant to them to begin to write the story. But today I'm doing it differently. Today I've invited my guest, David Salamons. Hello, David,
Hi there.
who is a corporate lawyer whom I've known for many, many years. And the reason I've invited David is because I've known him for many, many years. He is an inveterate storyteller. I think that's the right word, David, isn't it?
Well, I'm certainly a storyteller. Whether I'm an investor or not, I don't know. But yes,
The, because I've known David a long time, I've heard his stories that have made me laugh, that have made me cry, that have made me reflect. And the stories always have a point to them. And because David is a really keen storyteller within his own business, I thought I'd share some tips or some ideas about why storytelling is really important. And because we all have a story to tell. I'm taking it from a business perspective today, just for a change. So which story do you have that'll help you connect with your business clients? And because David has been in business a very, very long time,
not that
and
long.
okay, sorry, a correction, he's still a very young chick.
Long enough. That's true. Yeah.
Okay, not long
Yeah.
enough to be a chick and not long enough to be in business.
Both, I think. Yeah. Uh,
Okay, so because David has been in business a long time, he's got stories to tell, and he's often told me some of the stories he's mentioned to his clients, and I often reflected on that and how it really must have sat with his clients. So, David, let's start off by you telling us just a little bit about you and your background.
okay. Well, I mean, as you said, I'm a lawyer. I'm a partner in a large London city law firm, but that's not why I'm here today.
No.
I guess I've been telling stories and listening to, well, certainly listening to stories since I was a very small child. I fell in love with stories when I was, so high. And I just love stories, and they were always part of what I was thinking. And as I got older, I found that other people love stories as well. And I didn't know at that point anything about the science of stories. I just
Mm,
love telling stories. So people, you know yourself, people couldn't shut me up.
yeah.
I would just tell a story. And I found that whilst I love storytelling, um, people, when you were a kid, it was like, yeah, stories are for children. Okay, they're for children. Now it's time to get on and do the grown-up stuff. But I didn't kind of believe that, so I just kept on telling stories. And I've told stories in my business all the time, and I've done lots of other stuff aside from my own business. I've run personal development trainings around the world, done all sorts of things. And behind all of it, there's always a story because the brain is a story making machine. If you don't have a story, the brain will make one up anyway. So I
Yeah.
kind of got into that. And then a
Yeah.
few years ago, excuse me, I got into why actually does storytelling work in business? Why are people drawn towards you or repelled from you if you tell really bad stories? What is that? What
Yeah.
happens differently when you tell stories than when you just tell facts?
Yes.
And so I got into that. And so I just started telling stories. Often I'll tell the same stories in business and outside business because I just find them entertaining. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the truth. Often I will tell them to make a point, but often I just like the stories.
Yeah.
So I tell them. And
Yeah.
I love reading other people's stories and hearing other people's stories. And
Mm,
what I love is when someone tells me something and then I'll say, that's an amazing story. And they say, well, no, it's true. I say, yeah, it's a true story.
yeah. Yes.
It's your story. So let's give it a story arc and let's make it into something that you
Mm,
can use.
yeah.
So that's a long answer to a short question.
That's
Sorry.
fine. That's fine. Sometimes a long answer is required. So tell me, in all the stories you've been telling, all the years you've been telling stories, why do clients remember stories, not statistics? It's an obvious question, I know, but I think there's a story behind that answer of yours.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, it's obvious. Um, I'd like to say it's magic.
I agree.
And it
I
is a
actually
kind,
agree it's magic.
well, and when it first happened, it was magic, but then we found out it was science, because science is modern magic. Um, the reason why they remember stories rather than just facts is quite simply because different areas of the brain get sparked when you tell a good story, a compelling story. When you tell someone facts, pure facts, all that happens is the information part of the brain sparks. It doesn't do anything. It just
Mm,
logs it. When I tell a good story, it logs memory, it logs decision-making parts of the brain, all these chemicals, and also chemical reactions. So if I tell you uh, uh, an exciting story, cortisol will keep going in the brain. And what that does is it makes you remember it. Okay. And then you've got oxytocin, which is like the love drug. So if I tell you a story, maybe not a sad, something that happened to me that changed the way I thought about
mm,
life, something that was a change, you get drawn towards me. It's a human, it's like two humans coming together. You get me more.
yes, yes,
Okay. And the reason why you get me more is because when you're listening to me, part of it is your story.
yes.
Because it's like when you're listening to me now, and I'm trusting you are listening to me
I
now.
am.
Part of you is going, what am I going to say next? What and you go, okay, well, David's talking. But if I tell you a compelling story, a small part of you will stay with me. Okay, and it'll be your story. So that's kind of why it's a lot of science. I mean, Stanford University tells us people remember stories 20, I don't know how they come up with this, 22 times more if you tell facts. But the clever thing in business is wrap your facts in a story.
Yes.
You put them right in the middle, and and,
Yeah.
and you tell the story. And so people don't actually realize that they're hearing the facts. They've got this great story, and then boom. And it hasn't got to be a great story. It could be a simple story. But I'm sure you'll ask me about that later.
Yes. And I suppose it's because if we begin to immerse ourselves, if the listener, I, the listener, immerse myself in your story, I am connecting with you. And I think it must be that connection where we remember, because we don't, unless you're a mathematician or unless you love, or a data analyst, you absolutely love facts and figures. A lot of us, I'd be very careful, I don't generalize, a lot of us don't remember stats because we're not really connected to them. But you tell me a story about your mother or your brother or something that's happened, and I'll connect with you because I have a mother, I have a brother. And so
Absolutely.
I'm connecting. And in that connection is when I remember the detail and it'll stay with me rather than a figure. I'll have to go look up the figure again, but I certainly remember what you told me.
Absolutely. And in I tend to tell, because it's kind of put long involved stories sometimes because I enjoy them. But in business, a 2 minute story or a 2 minute narrative can do the trick.
Yes.
It's really it's much sim. I mean, there are there's all sorts of storytelling arcs and studies done about how you should tell stories. But actually, in business, you don't need to do all of that. You could do it much simpler.
Yes, because in fact, again, I think it's because if you are listening to the story, a trigger is set off in your mind and one is drawn into it. So if I'm telling is somebody a story about how I started my business, I can immediately see that they're listening. I can see it in their eyes. I can see it in the way that lean slightly forward. And then I know I've got that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, let's think for. I mean, I'm kind of freewheeling here, so you
That's
stop me.
fine.
Um, is if you want to tell someone about your business, if you're say you're in a software business, okay, and you want to tell them that your software is going to improve their efficiency by 40%, you can say, my software is going to improve your efficiency by 40%. Or you can say, um, Susan used to work in the office until 10 o'clock at night. Okay. And she never saw her child, Susan,
Mm.
or sorry, Fred, or whatever name. Okay. Um, she started using our software. And after 2 weeks, she's now tucking her child in. And her favorite story that she tells her child when she goes to bed is this. Nice, isn't it? Oh, you got a smart. it's just a simple thing.
Yeah.
Instead of saying 40% means
Yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
it's kind of, it's just telling some, it's what difference does it make, the 40%? What different, what's the change? What's the
Yeah.
narrative? How did it change Susan's life? It's just,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that when I just mentioned about when I started my business, and I talk about having gone to China at a specific time in the economy. I had no business background. And I think what I'm trying to do is, it depends on who I'm talking to. What I'm trying to do with that story is say, you don't have to have a Harvard business degree. You don't have to have a business degree. You have to have this, maybe being an adventurer, maybe having great ideas, maybe being brave, maybe determination. Maybe you need to support your family and you found a way of creating an income, but you have to go to China in order to do that. And so it's about telling, giving people examples of when you're starting a business, it's not cut and dry. There's no right or wrong. You just do it. And because sometimes people are afraid of doing a business, you just do it. And no matter how you do it, you start it.
I think that's absolutely right. There's no buts, but there's a yes and. I think it's quite important when telling stories in business that you remember that the audience is more important than you are.
Yeah.
You know that, because I could be guilty of this. I get so carried away with stories sometimes. I just get, and it's not about. It's got to be, what will they get out of it?
Hmm.
And so if I'm talking to an entrepreneur, I might tell a story about how I did something entrepreneurial or
Hmm.
how I changed something. If I'm telling somebody who's a director of sales, I might tell them something about how we tried this with a product and it failed dismally, and then we did that. And because we did that change,
Yeah.
this worked. And therefore, that might be something they would like to do.
Yes.
It's kind of, you've got to pick your stories for the people.
It's very, I'm glad you said that. It's about picking the right story for the right moment. Because I remember we had a conversation some time back when somebody asked the question, well, which part of my story do I actually tell? And you illustrated that really, really well. Would you like to talk about that?
Um, yeah, I remember. I remember that. That was about the clients. Yeah, who
Yes.
came in. Okay, I'll tell the story
Yeah.
again, and so the story I tell, and it's a true, it's mainly a true story. It is true. There's just a slight different emphasis. The story I tell about my firm, okay, as a law firm, is a few years ago, a couple of young guys came into my office, okay, and they were introduced to me, and they had this idea, kind of wacky idea, for an East African restaurant. And we got on quite well, and they agreed that we would act for them, and it went all very nicely. And then there was a subsequent meeting that I couldn't make, okay, because I had some other meeting on, and I asked one of my juniors to look after them in our boardroom, and the junior went and looked after them. And then the rest of the story I heard from a partner of mine, which was that he wandered past there and he looked through the glass walls and he saw that these clients were angry and irritated and turning away, and that the junior was more and more trying to get them to listen, and they weren't. And he went in and he said, "Do you mind if I sit at the back?" And he said, "No, of course." And he heard them. They were angry, and she was trying to keep going back to page 75 on the documents. And he said, "Do you mind if I just have a word?" He sat at the desk. He said, "Put the paperwork aside." He said, "So tell me about your restaurant. What kind of foods they serve? What's the best dish? What's the interior look like? Where do you get your inspiration?" And within a couple of minutes, they were totally, and the conversation went really well. And then he finished. He said, "Do you mind if we look at the paperwork?" No. And he turned to the, you've got an interruption here.
No, you've gone a
I-
bit quiet, that's all.
I've got an interference. I'm going to come out.
It's okay. We can just increase the volume, David. It's no problem.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfectly fine. Thank you.
Okay, so he sat down and we had this conversation with them about the food, and they were really excited again. And he said, "Do you mind if we do the paperwork?" They said, "No." turned to the junior and said, "Okay, let's do the paperwork, but no more than 5 minutes." And they went out. They hugged him on the way out, and it went really well. These these young guys who left, they went on to build a magnificent restaurant. They got 2 Michelin stars, and 2 months ago they were ranked the 15th best restaurant in the world.
Wow, that is
They are
something.
still clients of ours to this day,
Yeah.
and I suspect if that conversation had not taken place, they wouldn't be. So I tell that story to law firm. I tell, yeah, so here's so and the learning there is treat them like human beings, not like people you've got to do fat. They're human beings who have cares and fears and dreams. And this is about them, not about you. Talk about their restaurant, their deal.
Yeah.
That's the story I tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
In reality, what happened was, and I'll explain why I don't tell the whole stories. Actually, I finished my meeting and it was me who went in there. It was me who had that conversation with them.
Hmm.
And it was me who hugged them and they went out and they said, and me who's still in touch with them. And the reason I don't tell that story is for what I said to you before. I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the facts. If I tell that story in the way that it actually happened, it could sound about I'm trying to big myself up. I'm
Yeah.
trying to, this is not a story about me. It's about how the change took place.
Mm.
So when I say pick your stories and also pick the opinion from which you tell them.
Yes.
Whose view?
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense?
Absolutely. It's also knowing knowing which part of a story to tell. Because if you tell the whole story, it could go on for too long. But in that moment of when you're sitting chatting with your client and you're feeling a shift of energy, a shift of attention, you you take your story that you've got, you pick the part that's going to really hopefully turn whatever's happening within that moment so that you draw your client closer to you because the idea around the stories is to bring your clients closer to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And I think I've said this to you before, and it's what most people don't talk about when they talk about storytelling and business. The one thing you really need is bravery, courage to actually take that step in a meeting
Yeah.
and tell a story because people say they like the idea of storytelling. Everyone has a story, but actually, in a meeting, an important meeting, saying, "Can I just share something with you? Can I tell you a very short story?"
Yeah.
People gulp.
Yes.
Like, "Oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that." But uh, if you can't do that, or if you're not willing to take your courage in your hands, you're not going to be able to tell your story.
Yeah.
You're not going to share your story, and you might lose that sale. You might lose that connection. And
Yeah.
this is not just about selling; it's also about telling stories to staff, to people who work with you. To it's about bringing everybody closer to you. It's
Yeah.
not just always about how can I sell my products or build my brand.
Yeah.
It's about how can I build my internal connections with my
Mm,
suppliers or with other people.
absolutely. And it's also about allowing the client to also share the story because they've got a story to tell. And the more you hear about their stories and their needs, that for me is a wonderful way of marketing your own self and your own business because you are giving them the space to be seen and to be heard and to find out about that what are their vulnerabilities
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
we don't always know what's really happening for them. We're so often I remember when I've been in business and I've been growing the business, I've been so desperate to get a sale that I walked away thinking I did that all wrong. I was panicking. I didn't give anybody time to talk. I was telling them quickly about what I was did have fantastic products. I didn't give anybody any space. And so I've learned now you need to give people space and time. If it's a quick 10-minute meeting, okay, what do you do in a 10-minute meeting?
It's a very good question. First of all, why has it got to be a 10-minute meeting?
I, well, I have
Yeah,
had people who say, sorry, I've only got 10 minutes to spare. And
yeah.
that's it. They come in and they're gone.
Well,
I go,
what you could
whoa.
do, okay, what I said is you could say in the middle of the okay, can I share with you how this might make a difference? Okay. by using this product, something happened. But blah 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 blah. Um, we tried this product with so and so. Okay, it didn't work at first, and then we realized the reason why, and we changed this.
Mm,
By changing this, product worked, and their sales have gone up by 25%. Okay, just by using this. Is that something you'd be interested in?
mm,
That's kind of a 30-second.
yeah.
It's not
Mhm.
a whole. It's not a whole hero's journey kind of. But it basically, that won't make them feel emotionally close to you, but it'll make them think, hang on, that there's something here,
Yeah.
and maybe that's all you need for a 10-minute meeting.
Yeah.
A
As an
hook.
example, as an
You need a
example.
hook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
So David, you mentioned earlier about sometimes it takes courage and
yeah.
bravery. So how do you feel about vulnerability, uh, showing your vulnerability to your clients?
Um.
Do you feel that's a professional way of behaving in
Uh,
today's world of whatever it is?
I love it. I use it. I won't say I use it as a weapon, but most people are afraid. Now, I do understand in a high level corporate boardroom, it can be hard to show vulnerability. Okay. Um, but as a professional, um, I love the fact that most people don't use it because I can. Okay. Vulnerability is incredibly powerful. I mean, vulnerability by itself doesn't do anything. Just by saying, I'm really sad this didn't work for me, yeah, people go,
Yeah.
that's a shame. But by saying this failed for me and I suffered and I worked it and I learnt, and what I learnt is something maybe you can get the benefit of.
Mm,
It's very powerful. We've all made huge mistakes in our lives. Everybody has. I mean,
mm.
but show me the person who says they've never made a mistake, and I'll show you a liar. Okay. So yeah, no, but it's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody, everybody's suffered. Everybody's got wounds. Everybody. So all you by sharing that, okay, and sharing it well, it sparks the oxytocin, the love drug. You feel closer because you can see them as a rounded person
Mm,
now,
mm.
and they've struggled like you've struggled. And most people in business, I mean, pretty well anybody. I mean, probably if you sat down with, you know, Microsoft now, they would tell you their stories of struggle. I mean, I love looking at stories of people like Netflix and
Yes.
how Netflix were failing and they went to Blockbuster and who's heard of Blockbuster now? You and
Yeah.
I know, but none of the youngsters will know. And Blockbuster said it'll never take off and they
Yeah.
refused to merge with them. Well, we all know Netflix. Where's
Yeah.
Blockbuster? So the story of the meeting that I heard recently when Netflix went to Blockbuster and how they basically laughed at them. It's a great story. It's a
Yeah.
story of vulnerability. It's a story of we're the big boys, you're the small boys. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Get out of my board. So
Yeah.
I think vulnerability is very powerful. I don't have any of that. Oh, you shouldn't use vulnerability. I don't have that. But I have heard from friends who work in high level corporates that it's a struggle to use it
Hmm.
because people sense weakness. Okay,
Yes.
but that's part of the courage thing.
Yeah. And I suppose it is a little bit about choosing the timing, choosing when you feel it's the right moment. Because I know sometimes in the past I've blurted out stuff and I wish to God I hadn't because maybe I didn't have enough experience in handling myself, handling my business, not understanding my clients. So I think behind all of this though, there isn't this very strong element about one needs to really do one's homework for one's clients. One needs to really learn and understand about one's clients when one starts to work with them. So that by understanding them, you'll be able to tell that story that you need to tell, knowing that it's going to bring them closer,
Yeah.
bring them
No,
onto your side.
absolutely. Funny enough, are you a fan of Ted Lasso
Sorry if
TV
I haven't heard
series?
from him, vaguely heard
No,
from him.
the TV series. There's a
Oh,
comedy
no, no,
series.
no, I don't have a TV. Sorry.
Oh, you don't have a TV? Oh gosh.
No.
Okay. Well, many people who watch this will be a fan of Ted Lasso. And Ted Lasso is an American football manager who comes over to manage an English football team, and it's become a cult classic.
Okay.
And there's one, and he's a wonderful guy who tells homilies and stories the whole time. And there's one wonderful scene, which anybody who's watching this who's seen Ted Lasso will remember, where
Mm,
he's playing the big boss, okay, or in a pub game of darts, and the big boss is if he wins, he'll own the club, okay. And they're laughing at Ted Lasso as they always do. He's American, he can't play darts. And Ted Lasso, while playing darts, tells this story of how when he was a young lad, everybody laughed at him. And his father once said to him, um, don't try and be clever, be curious. He said, and I like curious people. He said, but most people aren't curious. Most people don't ask questions. Like, you haven't asked me, have I ever played darts? Was I any good at darts? Yes, I played darts. And while he's doing this slow, yes, I played darts with my father every Saturday at the sports bar. I was good. And as he's throwing this, they're suddenly starting to realize he's not an idiot. And of course, he wins. And he wins the club. And it's this wonderful transformation in which, and he tells a story of how most people aren't curious and don't
mhm.
ask questions. They make assumptions. And it's a wonderful story arc as he's going within 3 minutes from being the idiot they all think is going to lose the club to explaining not only will he win the club, but here's why. And it's just that stuff is lovely. It's absolutely lovely. It really, really, really is.
Yeah, yeah. Getting
So
to
I went
you.
off point there, but it's just about being
Well, actually,
vulnerable.
actually, it didn't because you mentioned one word, which is transformation.
Yes,
And isn't that a really important element in what one is trying to do in business between the buyer, the seller, as an example, the client? You- there needs to be some transformation, either in the
absolutely.
relationship, in the buying pattern, in the way the business is run, in the way how you can help your client to get to where they want to get to. It is transformation. Stories do transform in so many different levels.
Well, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, Beth. If stories don't transform something, they're not really stories.
Yeah.
There has to be a conflict. There's a storyteller I follow called Matthew Dick. He's a great storyteller, and he always says somewhere in your story, there has to be a 5 second transformation in which something either you change as a person, the
Yes.
person you're talking to changes, or they change something about the way they work.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got that, and you're quite right, if you haven't got that,
Yeah.
not much of
Yeah.
a story really.
We're coming to the end, but I want to just share a small little story that I was a part of for 30 years. So I used to travel to China a lot, and I had one particular supplier who used to make me the most exquisite scarves, and I used to sell these scarves to Laura Ashley, and they were made from silk viscose velvet, and they were silkscreen. Anyway, I knew very little about Madame Wong, who was the lady whom I used to work with. I knew that she was a teacher before she became a businesswoman. I knew she had one daughter. I knew she had a husband whom she said was rubbish. It was quite shocking. But one day, and out of the blue, um, she told me the story about, I said to her, what do you do when you're not working, like on a Sunday? Because they used to get Sunday off. So, well, every morning, my husband and I would get up very early at 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd go to the market. We'd buy all the fruit and the vegetables and the meat, bring it back, and we had to wash everything because it was all organic farming and everything was covered in mud. Had to wash everything. And then they had to clean it, dry it, chop it, cook it. And then she said, and after all of that, we'd sit down and we'd eat, and in 5 minutes, we'd finished our meal. And I thought, my God, that's a lot of work for 5 minutes. But that wasn't the point of it. What she had done, she had actually invited me into her life. And our relationship completely transformed after that. It really did. I was actually able to give her a hug, which I never did in all the years of working with her, because I was very respectful of Chinese culture that, you don't hug your Chinese suppliers, even though we would smile and laugh, but it totally transformed us. I gave her a hug and she gave me a hug back. And I thought, oh my God. And she was, for me, the most wonderful Chinese supplier any client could have. if there was a tiny fault on a scarf, she would send me a sample. She said, Beth, I cannot send this to you. This is B grade. And I'd be looking for the B grade all over the scarf. So, where's this B grade? I'll remake it for you. I said, Madam Wong, it's no problem. No, it's not good enough. You must have perfect stock. That was that transformational moment. It
Mm.
still sends shivers through
That's
me.
lovely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's lovely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So one final question, which I think a lot of people
Sure.
would be interested in knowing is using stories strategically in branding and marketing and leadership, but let's not go into leadership because that's a whole different topic over there. But
Yeah.
how would you perceive using a story to help clients with their own, one's own company, not just one's client, one's own company?
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know where to start. If you look at what's out there, okay, in the market with digital marketing and e- pretty well every brand has got a story. Okay. Um, I've got a relative, actually, the new husband of my stepdaughter, who started. I wonder if he's listening. uh, who who started a really great brand of cider.
Hmm.
Okay, and his family way back had a cider brand, so he tells the story of that, of the history of that, of how it started, and then
Hmm.
how he started in the country with this, and he tells us. So it's kind of like it's almost told as if it's always been coming. What
Hmm.
else would he do? He's a very bright young man, and he could do a lot of things, but that's what he's chosen to do. So it's, eh, I mean, you'll never see online anything, any successful brand or even any starting brand that hasn't got some kind of story behind it. So I think it's these days the problem is there's so much stuff out there
Hmm.
that in order to everyone knows about storytelling now.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so it's
very
almost like
trendy.
you've got to find something different about the story. You've got to start with something different, and I can't tell you what that is because it depends what the brand is.
Hmm.
But most successful, well, every successful brand, I would say now, has a brand story about how it started, about why it's different, about how the person, grew up as a young child and watched their mother doing X, or what um, it's, I don't know. I can't really answer the question about how to do a brand because it depends on what the brand is.
Yeah.
But you can find a story in every brand because every person has a story.
Hmm.
And it's also, particularly in professional services, what is it you're trying to say about the brand?
Yes.
So, for example, the story I just, or the narrative I just told you about the clients who came to the restaurant, what I'm trying to convey there is we are human, that we care about the clients, about that is the thing, that they come before our needs.
Yeah.
Okay. But you do it in a subtle way. You don't bang people's head with it. So it depends what you're trying to say, about uh yeah, about what is the message you're trying to get across.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you for coming and sharing this platform with me today. And I do hope that our listeners will take away some really, really good points about storytelling
Oh,
and
I hope so.
include their stories in their businesses. And hopefully it will be transformative for all of them.
I hope
Thank
so. It was a
you.
great
Thank
pleasure. I
you.
thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'm so glad you did, David. And uh, I will put into on the YouTube channel, I will put in David's YouTube handle because David's also got a uh,
YouTube channel. Yeah.
YouTube
The
channel about
storyteller.
his
Yeah.
storytelling. And they are great fun to watch. So I would urge you to watch David Salamons. David, do you want to tell us your YouTube channel name?
It's the storyteller DS, and I'll let you have that.
Okay.
Okay.
The
So
Storyteller at the Storyteller DS.
DS. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
definitely
Yeah, yeah,
worth
yeah.
watching. So
Yeah, yeah,
thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience and for your time. And I hope you get to watch this video and take away lots of lovely gems about storytelling. Thank
and
you.
be brave. Be
Oh,
brave.
yes, actually, that is a
Yeah,
word we should end this on.
yeah,
Brave.
yeah.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
goodbye. Thank you, David.
Goodbye.